In times of crisis, true leadership isn't measured by maintaining control, but by inspiring hope, confidence, and resilience. Right now, leaders are facing unprecedented challenges, from economic turmoil to workplace anxiety and rapid digital shifts. So how can you rise to the occasion to inspire your team through uncertainty? Today, we're discussing strategies for you just to not lead through crisis, but to thrive in them. Stick with us. Hey everyone, John here. 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 Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to today's episode. In the episode today, we're going to discuss how leaders can inspire during crisis. There is an unprecedented amount of change in organizations. I talk to leaders on a daily basis, and whether it's turnover, workplace anxiety, or just rapid changes in our processes and our systems, it could be digital, it could be doing more with less people, and leaders are getting a sense of frustration. They're getting a sense of overwhelm, and they're getting this really, I don't know where to turn mentality. And I find it very interesting that leaders don't have a conduit to turn to when it comes to dealing with these issues. And personally, I think that we haven't prepared our leaders very well. The other piece to that, I don't think that our organizations have prepared very well for what is coming. And so that's what I want to talk about today. If you're in an organization that may be stagnated, or you're in an organization that's scaling pretty quickly, and your systems and processes are out of date, or they're not set up for the scale, they're not set up for rapid prototyping, they're not set up to be agile, this episode is going to be for you. When you hit a crisis as a leader, you need to be able to have the tools to deal with them at that moment, not go through the crisis and then figure out what you should have done. So let's dig into what we're going to talk about today. The first topic for today is communication. That's a no-brainer, but communication with authentic transparency. And this is something that I, as a leader, personally struggle with. How much information do you share during a time of crisis? Do you share everything that you know? Or do you share just enough to get people to say, yeah, John's telling the truth, or John's sharing the information? There isn't a right answer here. What I do want to challenge you, though, is make sure that, transparency isn't about sharing every single detail about every single crisis situation. What it is sitting down with your team, sharing the information that you can share, and letting them know there's additional information, and when I'm able to share that with you, I will do so. Having gone recently through a big crisis situation, I will tell you that went a long way with the team, and I asked for some feedback. I said, okay, it's been 30, 45 days since we've gotten to the situation. How would you have approached the situation better? Is there anything I could have communicated better? And the overall consensus was, John, I appreciated the information that you shared. I also appreciated the fact that you told me there was information that you couldn't share, but as soon as you could, you would make that available. It let them know, because there's rumors that are going to circulate. They are going to hear things from either other employees, other departments. Even if you have a small business, people talk. So you might as well get everything out there that you know, and the things that you can't share. If a question is asked about a certain situation and you are not ready to share that, or you can't share that information, let them know that. That's what authentic, transparent communication looks like. So one thing here that is important before we move on to the next topic is you need to provide clarity for a path forward. There has to be some path. It doesn't necessarily need to be clear and paved and, ready for people to go run on, but there needs to be a path. Even if you're stepping over some rocks or some limbs or navigating around, some cactus. I was just out in Arizona and you have to navigate around those jumping cactus, those prickly pear cactus, but it is a path. And you know that there's a destination up there. You can see the arch. You can see the end of the trail. Whatever that is, let them know that. So we'll talk about some practical applications here in a little bit, but I wanted to just lay the foundation with this first topic. The second topic in today's episode, when we talk about how to inspire during crisis, is making sure that you're fostering a culture of collaborative problem solving. And here, this is one of probably, two things that I try to do when we're not in crisis to prepare us for a crisis situation. But make sure that you're challenging the team to come up with creative situations. When we learn something for the very first time, we imitate that process or that behavior. Then we get to a point where it becomes a behavior for us and we become creative. So we make it our own. For example, driving. 10 and 2. You put your hands on 10 and 2. You put your blinker. You look left. You look right. All those things that we had to learn in order to get our driver's license, in order to get behind the wheel. And then once you started in the driving, you probably did that for the first year. But now, how do you drive? Do you do any of those things? I would be very surprised if anybody still keeps their hands at 10 and 2 the whole entire time that they're driving a vehicle. Why? Because we have created a process around driving. So this is what you need to do. This is exactly the culture that you need to create, is that culture where creativity can come out during crisis. How can we solve this problem or think about this situation differently? Especially if it is unprecedented times, because there's not going to be any experience if you haven't gone through a similar situation, which that's what we do. That's what our brains revert back to is, okay, have we gone through this before? No. All right. What is it similar to? Well, it's similar to a situation that I experienced in the restaurant business when, the restaurant closed down and I didn't have a job. That was rock bottom for me. So this is very similar. How did I address that? Then you get into the problem solving piece. This is the culture that you want to be able to create, especially during a crisis time. So again, the takeaway here is ensure diverse perspectives are being considered. Make sure that, you're pulling in your creative, and that's the left and the right brain. I do a lot of journaling here. I do a lot of work on the board, and then make sure to enhance your team's ability to collectively respond. So whether you do that through a whiteboarding activity or, Teams app or an IMing, again, I'll share some particular activities here, but those are a couple that I use. And then the third topic that I want to discuss before we get into these practical applications are modeling resilience and adaptability. And for me, the team looks to you as a leader for behavioral cues. Have you ever been into a situation where you have a leader, you have a boss, you have a supervisor, you have, an entrepreneur, company owner, whatever that looks like, come in and model a different behavior than what they expect? It's incongruent. And for us as the employee, if we have a leader that is incongruent with their actions, then it sends conflicting messages that, he or she expects me to be at a higher standard than that leader. And I've said this before and I'll continue to say it. Nobody's going to work harder than you as the leader. The expectation is that you set the standard and you lead by example. So again, if you want them to demonstrate resiliency during a crisis, guess what you have to do? You have to be able to demonstrate that. If you want to demonstrate flexibility during a crisis, you should be the one that is demonstrating that flexibility. Don't let everything just stick on you. I had a good friend of mine that be like a duck. What does a duck's back do? It glides water off of. So when something comes at you, that's what it does. It glides. You absorb it and then you reframe it. You don't continue that negativity on. If it comes to you in a negative manner, then that's your opportunity to reframe it as a leader, not perpetuate that negativity throughout the organization, because it's real easy to do. However, if we want to model resilience and adaptability, the buck stops with us. You as the leader have to reframe that and then communicate the message that you want to cascade down through the organization. So again, the team will model these. They will follow you. They will do as you do, not necessarily as you say. Try it on. I want to take a quick break from the episode today to talk about a couple things. The first thing, less than 40% of our listeners are subscribed to our channel. You would be doing me a huge favor if you click on that subscribe button. It helps us grow our Go Be Great community and get this podcast out to as many people as we possibly can. The second thing, are you a small business owner that is drowning in the day-to-day operations? You're delegating tasks and you're still doing all the work. You're experiencing a high turnover. Maybe you don't have the systems and processes in place that you need to run a successful business. I invite you to go over to thejohnespinosa.com, fill out the form to see if you're the right fit. Now back to the episode. So let's get into some practical applications here, because that's what you're listening to this podcast for, this episode, to make sure, get out your journals. This is an active listening podcast. I don't want you just out there passive listening. So let's talk about one, communicate authentic transparency. How are some ways that we can do that? One, crisis briefings. 3 questions. Write these down. What you know, what you don't know, and what you're doing to find the solution. During a crisis, 3 of the most important questions that you can ask yourself during that situation. What do you know? What do you don't know? And what are you doing to find the solutions? Share that with your team. Crisis briefings, excellent way to communicate and be authentic during your transparency. And then make sure that you have established this 2-way dialogue. So there shouldn't be an environment where somebody shares a concerns or asks a question and there's repercussions for that. Or you belittle them or you make them feel like their question is irrelevant, because others will see that. Again, it goes back to that behavioral piece. But this 2 things alone will open up the door for authentic and transparent communication. Number 2, fostering culture and collaborative problem solving. So what do you want to do here? We want to have collaborative brainstorming sessions. I mentioned earlier, I love to get in a room with a big marker board, start at one side, map out a process, map out, okay, what are the rumors of today? What have you heard out there? I'll write them up on the board. Then I'll go back and I'll say, okay, what do I know? What I don't know? And then what am I doing to find the solutions for each one of those rumors? Get them out there. What are you hearing? Again, remember, everybody's going to talk. So you as the leader, set the precedence. Get out in front of this type of stuff. Don't let it just fester, especially during a crisis. Make sure that they know that they can come to you, have a 2-way dialogue without fear of repercussions. And then one of the other things that I really like to coach on, especially if you have larger organizations, and even smaller organizations can do this if you have varying roles and responsibilities, create a cross-functional team to come up with a creative solution to the crisis. So take someone from accounting, take someone from, marketing, take someone from operations, take someone from the executive office, put them together, do a small little team. I always like about 4 to maybe 5. I don't like to get any bigger than 6. And throw a challenge at them and let them create a solution for it, especially during a crisis. Have them bring to you 3 possible solutions and 1 recommendation. And then normally what I do is I go with their recommendation. Why? Because they've thought out through the process, they've thought out 3 possible solutions. And if they're going to recommend something, and if it's 5 to 6 of my brightest from a cross-functional team in the organization, I'm going to know that they thought of each one of those areas. It's a great way for you as a leader to empower people and to make sure, again, that we entrust them to problem solve. That's what we're paying them for. You as a leader should not be the only problem solver. Put yourself in a situation to where they are bringing you ideas. This cross-functional team is bringing you ideas. You can make the decision or you can take their recommendation. And last but not least, the third one, when we talk about modeling resilience and ability, here, the 2 topics, the 2 examples that I want to share are be authentic in the fact that we all go through challenges. I shared earlier, we were going through a pretty big reduction in force, and the team was taking it tough. The morale was low. People were becoming physically sick because the worry and the stress on them. And one day I shared a story. I shared the story that, I experienced 100% of my income being completely gone in a blink of an eye. When the restaurant closed, Jen and I, my wife, both were working there. We were cleaning the restaurant. That was how we were paying the mortgage. Worked on a Sunday, cleaned the restaurant that night, came in on Monday, and there was a sign on the door, and I still get a pit in my stomach when I tell that story. But after I told it and we adjourned the meeting, I had a couple people come by the office and say, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. One, it let them know that you're human as a leader. Sometimes people put us on a natural pedestal and they think that we're impenetrable. They think that, things just, we're Superman or Superwoman and we can repel and we can jump, high-story buildings and have super strength, when in all actuality, we're people. We're people just like you out there listening, just like the ones that we're leading, just like our peers. We're all people, and when we are going through a crisis, when we're going through a struggle, there's nothing that bonds others together than sharing an example, being authentic, being a little vulnerable in those situations. So share an example of how you may have gone through a similar crisis situation, and it may be a failure story. I'm not saying we succeeded. It was tough. It was real tough to get out of that situation. The other example here, the other activity and practical application that you can take away is encourage innovation. So back to the cross-collaborative team, the cross-functional team to work on a solution. Make it creative. It's not about how can we do more with less. It's how can we do the right things with less. Just because we've always done things in an organization does not mean that they need to continue, particularly during a time of crisis. If you are experiencing maybe a reduction in force, a layoff, and the ones that are left, they're just as hurt. They just watch their friends and family who we're at work more than we're at home, walk out the door. That is a grief. It's almost a divorce in some aspects of that relationship. So give them a minute. Put yourself in that situation to where, I've lost my colleagues, the ones that I depended on, and now we're expected to do the same amount of work with less. I don't know about you out there, Go Be Great community, but I have a problem with that. So the first question I ask is, how can we think about this differently? Is there something we can automate? What can we stop doing? What can we start doing? And what needs to continue? Powerful questions when you get into a situation where you're having to encourage innovation. So again, today's episode was all about helping you lead through a crisis. I hope this information helped you. Go back, take a listen, make sure to write down those practical applications. As always, if you're not subscribed to the channel, you'd be doing me a huge favor. It allows us, by you subscribing, to get this content out to as many leaders as possible. And that helps them grow. That helps them lead teams better. It helps them lead through crisis. For this particular episode, share this episode with family and friends. If you found it valuable, it would mean a lot to me. I believe in you. I hope you're more prepared now than you were when you started listening to this episode to lead through crisis situations. Go be great. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.